Okay, I just started recording.
All right.
How are y'all doing?
I'm doing well. I'll just start with this. It's August 15th as we're recording this. So thanks for joining the Make Guitar podcast. We have a special guest, Steve. Steve, where are you located physically right now?
So I'm in Redwood City.
Redwood City. Okay. All the way from Redwood City.
Yes. I'm not originally from Redwood City, but that's where I live now.
Nice.
All right. Well, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, our hundreds of subscribers will. I think we broke the 100 mark, didn't we?
I think we have. Yeah. I'll have to check.
Yeah. This is a ground floor opportunity, Steve.
I see that. And then that's why when you said, hey, I'm recording it, I was like, this is my chance.
Yeah, excellent. That's the attitude. Hey, so I wanted to bring it up. So like I hadn't talked to Steve in a couple of years, and so we'd met up on the internet, and I sent you a pedal, and then you sent me a pedal, right? I think actually pedal exchange, like trading pedals, should be we should make that a thing, right? And this is what Steve sent me here. It says fun, right?
That's
and
a great name for a pedal.
What?
It's a great name for a pedal.
Yeah, it is pretty good, right? I like the graphic, I was gonna say, it's a clone of the Boss Tone. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I do a lot of building these days just for myself. If I'm generally doing something commercial or something I'm looking to sell, I'll make and design my own PCB for it. But in this case, I bought a PCB from an online supplier. This was a circuit that I'd made on perf boards years and years ago. There used to be a ton of layouts like Dragonfly. I don't know if you remember him, yeah. Dragonfly. So I had so many of his layouts for perf board and for Vero board printed out, and I made this circuit and was blown away by how good it was. And I ended up putting it in a pedal and selling it at a swap meet in Berkeley, which is I think where we originally met. They used to do a lot of swap meets at the Gilman Street in Berkeley. And so I made it, sold it, and then I got the itch, like, oh, I got to make that one again. That was really good. And so I threw this one together for my own use. And then when you said, hey, I've got this one, I was like, oh, I have to send in something back. So this is my favorite fuzz currently. It changes all the time, but this has been one that I've come back to time after time.
Yeah, this is a cool one. I have to thank you again, because this is one I hadn't built before. Like I built tone benders and fuzz faces and big muffs, but I hadn't done the Boss Tone. So it's kind of cool. This is like a new one to the collection, I was looking at this and it looked like you used the pedal PCB. And I was going to say, I like them, I like they have a great company, and the PCBs are really good quality. And one of the things that I don't know if you noticed this, but one of the things I like about their PCBs is the layout. So not just the parts, but where the off-board wiring goes. They always put it at the bottom of the board in a row of like 5 little, pads, right? And then they put the LED on the board and the pots on the board. So it just makes the assembly like kind of a breeze.
Yeah, that's what really drew me to keeping on using those PCBs. Generally, if there's a pedal I want to try, and it's too big or it's too troublesome for me to bread, I'll use somebody else's, because a lot of people's wiring is like, hey, you got to run it from here all the way back to the switch, and then it's back out from the switch into the board, and I don't like that. And so for these guys, it's like, I think it's 4 units to the switch and then just wires out to the jacks. It makes it so easy. And I feel like, especially in a circuit like this, it's really high gain and it does oscillate if you have it on like all the way up. Being able to separate your wires like that really cuts down on all that noise. Like just using the case of the pedal as shielding almost.
Yeah. I actually
there is some stuff I would sometimes.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I would almost prefer it to have it so that the jacks I could connect all at the top, and then do it to have another row on the switch PCB and 2 extra wires there, so I could keep wires at the top, wires at the bottom without wires going all the way up. But I understand that, you know, they're trying to standardize it and make it so that if you buy one of their PCBs, it doesn't matter which one you buy, they're all going to be roughly the same, and it just standardizes everything for them. But if it was me, I would do it a different way for my purposes. But that may not work for a lot of these fuzz circuits.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny you said standardized, because that's exactly what I was thinking. Is like, I've actually, on the boards that I've made recently that I published to Osh Park, I kind of went with their same layout. Like, I put all the, like, the, you know, input, output, LED, you know, pads at the bottom, and the LED, the actual LED on the board itself. So I did it the same way, you know. I was kind of thinking, like, you know, we should just get everybody together and just the community agrees on the same layout. You know, right?
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. And like, and I think I kind of had a few years layoff between my last pedal and then my more recent batch of pedals. And so these days, it's really, back in when I started doing it, it was very rare to find anyone who made a PCB that had board mounted pots. Almost always you had to offboard wire them, which was a nightmare, like spaghetti junction inside every pedal, right? And so with these, they'd make it so easy. You can just buy like just a simple, you know, connector like this one, pre-bonded, pre-wired, solder it in, and there's no cables flapping in the breeze or whatever else. So really like that system, and that's something that I think that most people have come to agree is the best way to do it. It's nice and standard, and it makes it so that, you know, if your switch fails, you can just throw another one on. You're not, you know, desoldering, and just makes it a lot easier for me.
Yeah, I actually, you know, it's funny we're on the same page here. You showed that ribbon cable. I took the back off because I was actually going to point out that you use the ribbon cable. Like, I haven't tried that yet. I'm always doing like single wires through here, but like, I've been tempted to try it with the ribbon cable. Does that work pretty easy for you?
So yeah, you just have to remember that you kind of have to do it in the right order. It's really hard to wire it up. It's like once you're in this system, you almost have to follow like to do everything in the right order. So generally, you want to solder it to the PCB first, install your switch, and then solder in the thing at the end. Because sometimes I do it the other way around, and then it's a pain to figure it out. So
yeah, that's good advice.
It's time savers. You know, I don't have to strip and cut to length 4 things of wire. Remember, if I bought pre-bonded wire or not, I don't have to tin any leads. So it just takes out human error for me, which is one of the things that always trips me up and stuff. I mean, if you look at I'm really proud of this, right? If you look at my pedals from 10 years ago compared to this, if I could go back in time and show my old self this one, he would be incredibly impressed.
Well, I'm incredibly impressed. It's very clean. I wish my pedal looked like that. Mine is just a snake pit of, I mean, this is a kit that I bought from General Guitar Gadgets. And if they made a kit like yours, I would buy it.
You said snake pit. Isn't that Slash's band?
Yes, it is.
It's easy enough. That's right.
Yeah. You know, let me throw another idea out here, right? So I'm going to say, like, usually I was on the internet, I was on Reddit. They have a r/DIY pedals, right? So I post there sometimes. And I'm usually like, I just try and stay positive, but sometimes you see something and you're like, you know, you don't want to sound negative, but you're like I saw a guy and I was like, dude, you got to reheat up that solder joint, you know, because it's just like a big blob of solder, you know, right? And people thank me. The other day though, I was on there and somebody had a pedal and everything was fine, but they had used those little tiny lumbered jacks, you know, the ones I'm talking about. Maybe I have one here.
I have one. These ones?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Right. And
yeah.
You know what? I don't like those. They're okay. Like if you have a tight space, they're the smallest and they're pretty good for small jacks. but for some reason to me, like they get a little flimsy. If anything happens that impedes that spring-loaded thing that meets the tip, if anything impedes its motion, like the front of it where it hooks around will bend out of the way when you try to put the jack in, right? And then the metal feels a little flimsy. So what I was going to thank Steve is it looks like you use Switchcraft. I love these open frame Switchcraft. These are my favorite jacks. They're so burly, and when you put the jack in, they snap. It's like a positive. You're just like, yeah, like it's not loose. It's not going to come loose. I don't know.
Too, but the Nutric ones they're a little harder to get in and out of, and some people don't like that, and some people don't care. And I think not everyone stocks them. Like it's one of those things where I'll go and I'll look, and if they're available and they're less than Switchcraft, I do like the Lumberg ones just in terms of their size. So most of my builds these days are top mounted jacks. That's just when I know that a lot of pedal guys are like, no, I want them on the side. Everything else is on the side. Boss is on the side. Ibanez, I think you can cram a lot more on if you can jam them all up next to each other. So if I'm doing a pedal with top mount, I usually go with these. Now, that's a B box, not a 125B. It's the smaller, the Hammond's 1.5. What is it? Tell me. 90. Right. It's a B. So I can get these right next to each other in that box, but it is way too tight. If my drilling tolerances are off, and I have my own hand drilling with a dress, so if I'm doing that, I have to be spot on because there's no room for error on those. So if it's side-mounted jacks, I'd much prefer to use a more common jack like that one. And there's the other type of jacks that I'm not a huge fan of is this kind. Like, I don't mind how the pedals fit, but these tiny little holes you've got to sneak wire through, like most of the time, it's just a little small for me. So I have a bunch of these that I bought and went, oh, I really don't like that. So still have a bunch of those. But I think this is the more common, what people used when they wanted to save a little space is this kind. But still, I'd much rather use a Switchcraft if I can.
Yeah, I have a bunch of those plastic frame jacks, but only because I got an order from Tida, but it was for the wrong person. So they sent me someone else's order, and it was like a ton of pedal buildings. It was just kind of funny. Like, it was like all the stuff like I would order, except not the stuff that I ordered.
That's great. And they let you keep it?
Yeah. They said, send us a picture. And they were like, okay, yeah, that's totally the wrong stuff. We'll get your order out. And they didn't ask for anything back or anything. So I was like, oh, great. I could tell too, the guy was building a Klon and a bunch of other stuff because like in a delay, because he had a PT 2399 and he had a charge pump and some ox blood knobs, like, right. And then he had like probably
sure. That's what exactly.
Yeah, he probably had like 20 of those jacks. So now I have 20 of those jacks to use up.
Yeah, they're okay. They're nice they save the same amount of space. But Switchcrafts is what I tend to, the open frame Switchcraft is what I tend to gravitate towards for side plugs.
Yeah, they do take up more space, but I if I have a choice, I would pick those first. They're just, I don't know, just feels more reliable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
they do.
So I got a question about the Boss Tone. Okay. So I was playing with the pedal, right? I was testing it out, and I noticed the oscillation. So what I noticed is if I turn the gain down, like pretty low, but not all the way at the bottom, like maybe up like 20%, 15%, right? Like there's no noise. But if I hit a note, and it was weird because it was like if I hit G or G sharp, it would start oscillating, and I could take my hands off the guitar or mute the strings and the oscillation would continue. And sometimes if I played, the oscillation would continue on top of my playing. But if I hit a particularly loud chord, it would cut the oscillation.
Okay, so let me give you just a brief overview of my playing. So my music these days is all silent stage. So I play with an analog preamp, and then I have a digital cab simulator box that mine is set up to sound like a high watt stack, and I play into that. So when I'm playing really loud fuzzes into that, I don't get any of that because there's no his chord, just the guitar, even microscopically picking up that sound. So when I'm playing it through my rig, so the two controls are actually two volumes. It's an input volume and an output volume. And so I think the gain is set, and it's just how much signal you give it and how much you let out. Set it and it's all the way up, it oscillates. But if you touch it back, it goes away. And so if I ran it through an amp, maybe I would have that same issue that you're having. But because my rig is just completely silent except for what's coming out of headphones, I think I'm missing the oscillation there, because I don't get any oscillation through my headphones when I run it. So if you're running it through an amp, I think that's what might be. Yeah, it's a really high gain circuit, and it's one of those things where if I had known that and if I had tested it through an amp, I might have sent you a different pedal, because I don't know how much use that is to you.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's a feature, not a bug. And just to be clear, it's not feedback.
Okay.
So I have my amp set to like room levels, like where it's not going to feed back.
Okay.
Right? And it's the weirdest thing if I turn, because it's very unique to this pedal. Like if I turn this down, and it's like when this second knob is down, and then like everything's fine, there's no noise, it's dead quiet, and I could play something, let go, it's dead quiet. But if I hit a note, like a particular note, all of a sudden internally the circuit starts oscillating. I could reproduce it. I was able to do it like over and over again, and I found the note, and it was like G or G sharp, like somewhere in there. Like I could hit a G and a G sharp, and it would like start oscillating.
Well, hey, if you've got a song where you're playing that might be a really cool feature.
I know. It was the weirdest thing. It was like, I was like, whoa, what is going on there?
That makes me wonder. So my guess is I think there's one ceramic cap on that board. And I bet you if you switch that to a poly cap or a really nice, like multi-layer ceramic, that would go. I've had these ceramic caps for a long time, and I'll pull them through and I'll go, I really need to not use these anymore, because I think they cause a lot of that sort of problem, and I need to switch over to some multi-layer ceramic caps to avoid that. But I'm pretty sure that's probably what it is.
Could I just since we're talking about something that's new to me, we're talking about this pedal, right? The Boss Tone by Mahoney.
Well, so the original Boss Tone was made by a company called Jordan back in the 60s. And Jordan were more famous for making like Geiger counters and those kind of things. But Fuzz was selling all of, it's a really wild company. Like they're mostly scientific equipment. And what ended up happening was that Fuzz pedals were going nuts. Like everyone had a Fuzz, like a company was, and made this pedal. And it was a little belt pack style one, and it just clipped into your jack. And that was it. And so this company, Mahoney, I think they bought the rights to say Boss Tone. And they did a collaboration with JHS recently, and they released a bunch of, crossover pedals or whatnot. And there was a big video on it. So recommend that video for some history behind the Jordan, the company that made the original Boss Tone.
All right, I'll check it out after we do this.
Hey, sure. Well, actually, while we're on that, I got a question. So have you seen any of those JHS videos? Because they seem to be going nuts on the internet, on YouTube. And then they came out with Pedal the Musical.
Yeah, I still haven't seen Pedal the Musical, but I will tend to watch when I see them pop up my feed. It's nice to learn some of the history behind them. And behind the companies. I'm not, musicals are one of those things that kind of, I'll hear someone will say, hey, do you want to see a musical? And I go, absolutely not. No, thanks.
I'm with you on that.
So
I watched Pedal the musical. I think you guys should see it. It was kind of
Pedal the
amazing.
musical is really good. It's really like the production values are pretty outstanding for a YouTube channel.
Yeah, it was nuts. Yeah, what did you think of it, Kirk? I mean, like, what? Because when I was watching it, I was like, who's crazy enough to do this? This is totally crazy.
Well, it makes the history of pedal building really memorable. It's like it's a very educational video, and it's very entertaining because of the lengths that they went to make the video, with the songs and the costumes and all of the sets. I mean, they actually built sets to make this video. It's pretty crazy. And so I learned a lot and I was entertained. But yeah, I'm not normally a musical guy. I think it was a musical on the level that, like the Muppet movie is a musical. It's not like, West Side Story or something like that.
We got to do a Muppets with pedals.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Hey, so why don't we talk about what are you listening to lately, Kirk?
I just discovered I've known about this band for years, but somebody was listening to it at work, and it caught my ear. It's Yellow Lorry, Red Lorry. I think they were on Factory Records back in the 80s, kind of like maybe in the tail end of Factory Records at that time. So it sounds very much like Sisters of Mercy. But yeah, it's definitely kind of appropriate for our times. It's a lot of great goth and doom kind of music coming out.
Nice. You said Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry?
Oh, it's one or the other. It's either yellow, red, or red, yellow. But yeah, that's the name of the band.
Are they on Bandcamp?
So that's a tongue. That's a tongue
so.
twister.
Yes, it is. If you say it 5 times fast, yeah.
Right.
I think I found them here.
I've also been listening to this band from Germany called Dark.
Dark.
Dark, and it's super gothy electronic music, but the guy's voice is very like typo negative kind of thing. Again, it's like for these apocalyptic times, it's really appropriate listening.
Nice. I'm gonna have to check out Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool, especially since I was aware of them for a long time. I just never got around to listening to them.
Yeah, nice. What have you been listening to, Steve?
So I've had a couple of albums this week that have been in heavy rotation. The first one is by an artist named Yola, and she's British, but she lives in Nashville, and she was nominated for I found this album and just listened to it and thought it was great. Didn't know anything about her backstory. Found that like in pre-pandemic, she was nominated for a Grammy for an album she did, and people were really impressed. As a movie, and she wouldn't happen because of the pandemic. So she decided she would record an album, and it's called Stand for Myself. And it's like, how would I describe it? It's like if all of the Motown and soul R&B singers from the 60s had recorded in Nashville instead of Detroit. It's like there's this sort of roots country, a lot of lap steel on it, and it's a total soul record, but it's also got this country tinge to it, which is, it's a treat. You're listening to it and you go, huh, two tastes that go together that you didn't know went together. So I've been listening to that. And the exact opposite of that album is an album I've been listening to. I can't remember the name of the album, but it's by King Woman. And they're a Bay Area. I don't know if you're familiar with these guys, but they're Bay Area. They recorded at a recording studio in Oakland that is run by a friend of mine, Jack. And it's like It's like metal and shoegaze coming together.
And a bit of goth.
So it's another one of those things where it's two things that I enjoy. She had a ton of goth for a long time, and then someone gave her a copy of Paradise Lost, and it filled in all the blanks. And she went, okay, this is what this album's about. And so it's very, very goth. It's like, it's all about angels falling from heaven. And yeah, it's a really great album. Recommend it.
One of my former coworkers was in the band. He toured with them.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. I found them on Bandcamp. Me and Kirk are a big fan of Bandcamp. Like we listen to everything on Bandcamp.
Me too. So Bandcamp is my go-to for everything these days. You know, none of the other people pay you any money for having their music on there. They just steal from you. So Bandcamp is one of those things that a friend of mine, Drew, is an engineer there. He does all of their he does a lot of their tech stuff. He's a IT guy, I guess. So yeah, they're really great. Love Bandcamp.
Yeah, lately I've been listening to, or today anyway, or this week I listened to Woe Fat.
Woe Fat.
Yeah, they're just kind of like a stoner metal kind of band, you know. They're kind of good though. I sent it to a friend of mine, and he pointed out, he was like, "Woe Fat, isn't that the mob boss from Hawaii 5-0?" And I was like, I had to look it up, and I was like, "You're right," you know. So yeah, I was kind of getting into Woe Fat. They're very, you know, pentatonic through a Marshall, you know.
Okay. How do you spell Woe Fat? Just
WOFAT.
Okay.
Two
like
words.
It sounds. Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, right.
Whoa.
Yeah, I listened to their last album, and then like during the week, and then today I took a walk and I listened to their first album from like, I don't know, 2006 or something. It was kind of good. You could hear a lot of progress between the two albums. I like to hear that.
I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Can you understand the lyrics well?
Yeah, you can hear what they're singing. You know, they're not like, I'm not into the Cookie Monster metal, you know. It's
not my favorite thing either, but I love to listen to metal while I'm driving. But if the lyric, like I've got two kids, and so if they can understand what's going on, I can't really play it. So we're fortunate that we have two great college stations on the peninsula that to be playing some kind of metal that indecipherable actually saying. So it works really well when I'm in the car. But if you can understand it, then I have to my son really likes the Dope Smoker. Because it's just big and heavy and loud. Yeah. But he can't really pick out what they're saying. Yeah, I like that album too. They came out with a new album recently, you know. Sleep kind of had this renaissance, like I don't know like what you call it, but they kind of disappeared. Like the rumor is that they got a recording deal. They spent like 2 years recording an album, and then it turned out to be like one single 50-minute song that they delivered to their producer in a bong. You know, it's just like they put the tape in this giant bong is the story, and then the label was like, we can't produce this album, and so then they disappeared. And then for some reason just recently they got popular again, you know. Yeah, I saw they were touring, and they had a big rig rundown, and his pedal board is insane too, and his whole setup is just wild that he can do all that in like drop C and still, yeah, his rig is nuts. Very impressive. Yeah.
Was that on Premier Guitar?
It was, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll check that out.
Yeah. I saw Matt Pike with his other band High on Fire, like, you know, probably 10 years ago in the Mission, and they were pretty good. And then it blew me away because recently I heard that High on Fire won a Grammy. And I'm like, High on Fire wins a Grammy? Like, what? Like, how does that happen? Yeah. I mean,
they didn't make one 30-minute song,
but I'm just surprised. You know, I feel like they're not mainstream enough to get a Grammy. You know what I mean? Or mainstream enough to be recognized, let's say, you know?
Right. I think the Grammy, yeah, we're cool. Check it out. We know these cool groups, but they don't.
Yeah. Have you heard Sleep's new or most recent album? I think it's called The Sciences or something.
I haven't. Is it on Bandcamp?
I haven't. I'll definitely check it out.
I thought it was good. It was worth listening to. It's got some good heavy riffs. I don't think they're on Bandcamp, though. I think they're like, we're bigger than Bandcamp. They're like, you can get them on Apple Music.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well,
their old stuff's on Bandcamp. Like you can get a lot of their old stuff there, but I think their new stuff isn't.
Yeah.
it might be contractual,
Yeah. Who
not
knows?
allowed to.
It's funny. There's some things like that. Like I was listening to this Melvins record, and Melvins, they came out with this album called Lysol, and they had to change the name to Melvins, right? Because Lysol was trademarked. But nowadays you can't get the Lysol album unless you get it as one single long recording where the songs aren't divided. And I think it's some weird legal problem they had with their label. So I have the one that's just one long song, but it's like the whole album. I would recommend that album if you just like weird super heavy drone metal, especially like the first song is amazing. It's just like it's pretty good. It's hard to describe, in words, but it's kind of amazing. They said they were listening to a lot of Tibetan like chanting, and somehow that came out. And actually, when I read that and then I listened to the album again, I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally getting that influence here,
Yeah, and they're the big they're like aluminum guitar guys, right?
I think now, yeah. I think way back in the day, like, Buzz, the guy that plays guitar, he had like a Les Paul Black Beauty, just like a typical Les Paul, right? But I saw them a long time ago at the Justice League or something in San Francisco, and they were pretty amazing. I bought the album back then. I was like, after I went to the show, I just was like, that was so great. I'm going to buy the album,
The Lysol album.
Sure.
Yeah, I bought that one. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, on CD, but nowadays I don't even have any CDs. Everything's digital. Yeah.
Yeah, all mine are up here. This is where they live now.
Yeah, funny.
Yeah, I only have the ones that Amoeba wouldn't take.
I know. I did that a couple of years ago. I made a couple trips down to Amoeba, and I just tried to sell as many of my old CDs as I could. I kind of regretted it because there's a couple albums that I'm like, I want to buy this again, but I can't get it because you can't get it digital, or it isn't some, you know what I mean? Like there's a couple things like that. And then I was like, man, that was kind of dumb. I should have kept the things, but at the time I wasn't listening to it. I don't know. So
yeah. Well, I actually sold mine because I was going to have a birthday party and I wanted to be able to, provide free booze to all the attendees. So I just sold all my CDs. I had ripped them all to MP3, so I wasn't worried about it. But now I kind of regret it because, of course, the booze is all gone, and
so is the
and
music.
yeah, you know how data is. When you digitize things, it's ephemeral or whatever. It's a UFO could fly over and bam, there goes your music collection.
Yeah. Actually, it is kind of weird. I think we talked about this before, but just the idea of how kids these days listen to music versus the music that we listen to. Because like when I was growing up, you went and you bought an album, and the album was a collection of music that all kind of went together, usually. And then you had it and you owned it and it was yours. And nowadays, like, people don't listen to albums, they just listen to the songs on Spotify, or they make a playlist or whatever, and they just kind of get a constant stream of like a radio, almost like a radio station, where they're just getting music that's curated for them, and that's kind of different than buying the album, like you miss some tracks, because like, there's like some tracks on the album that they're not going to curate, they're not going to put it in your feed,
Right. Well, it also affects your
Yeah.
your evaluation of a band. Like, I mean, some bands, they might have one track that's written by like a famous, or like a hit writer, and then the rest of it is just a bunch of filler. And so, you might think this band is great, but they've only really put out that one song that was on the radio.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. I feel like Live 105 is generally the station I'll listen to if I've got my kids in the car and they don't want to listen to experimental music on college radio. And there'll be a song I'll hear and I'm like, okay, I see why they're playing it, but this is pop music that's being played on alternative stations. And then you never hear any other songs from that band ever again. It's like they just moved the pop machine to the left. You know what I mean? And so a lot of those songs, I feel like a lot of these bands are one-hit wonders now. And I'm sure they have an album, and I'm sure they work very hard on their music, but it just feels very, very different from my experience growing up with alternative music.
Oh, I was going to say, the thing with me is that a lot of times I like some of the songs on the album that aren't popular. 'Cause there's like a couple songs that they play on the radio, and then there's these other songs you never hear on the radio, but like I actually like those songs. There's a few of them that I really like, and you don't get the opportunity to hear those these days,
Well, I think it depends on the band. I mean, what Steve was talking about is like in the 80s, there was really an underground music scene. So you'd have music, you'd have artists that there wasn't a radio station to play their stuff, but like people would pass it around word of mouth, and you'd hear these album tracks because you'd get the whole album. And there were some really great songs that think about The Cure. The Cure had like sort of their hits. They weren't on the radio necessarily back in the day, but everyone who was into The Cure also knows their album tracks, because that was all like crafted. It was a labor of love making the entire album. They weren't trying to get on the radio with that stuff.
Yeah, Cure with their 10-minute intros to every song. We're not trying to get on Radio 1 with those.
Yeah, funny. Yeah. So we live in a different world, I'm going to plug Bandcamp again, because I think Bandcamp is going to save us. Bandcamp actually, like they're bringing the album back. Like people put songs on, or they put music on Bandcamp in album format, which is kind of nice.
I agree. I like listening to entire albums of artists I've never heard.
For sure. And I think the interesting thing about Bandcamp is, unless an artist is releasing one song, you have to buy the album. So, I mean, generally, I don't think I've paid more than $12 for an album, which I think is fine. I used to pay twice that sometimes in England to get some albums. Like, people don't even know how expensive music used to be. Like if you went to a record store. So I don't mind paying $12. I'm not big on the whole digital thing. I would much rather have a physical copy, but as I've gotten older, my space is limited to that. I just don't have anywhere to store CDs anymore, and so I think Bandcamp is ahead of the curve, because it gives your potential audience the chance to listen to your whole works rather than just your hits. And so I think that creates a deeper bond between you and the music, because you're more invested in the band when you've purchased an album versus one song. So I really like their model. I love Bandcamp Fridays. They do the Fridays where, just great. Just a great company all around, it seems. And they're not a super big company either, as what I understand. So yeah, lots of support for them.
Yeah. They also make it really, I think they sell a lot of vinyl through Bandcamp, so you can still get the physical media. And, for there's a lot of people in the younger generation that vinyl is, that's where it's at.
It's back.
It's back.
Yeah, actually, let me throw in there too. There's people sell cassettes too, so you can get cassettes. Yeah. People are into that. You're reminding me. I ran into this. I'm kind of into this Eurorack thing on the side, and so I listened to a lot of weird electronic stuff. And I ran into this guy who had done a series of songs based on numbers, and he called his records like 433. It's kind of a play on the John Cage piece, right? and he produced an album on Bandcamp, and you could buy a physical copy on a floppy disk.
Ooh, cool.
Which I thought was really funny, you know, like I don't have a computer that would play that like would get the floppy disk to work on these days, right? My computer, I don't even have a CD-ROM these days, right? You know,
Right.
but I like the idea. I wasn't gonna buy the floppy disk, but it was a good idea.
I think Bandcamp even makes it so that you can use them to make vinyl now, to make a record.
Oh.
So one of the services they offer is they'll have a company make records for you. Now, I don't think you can just send them MP3s like you do. Like, I don't know how you publish music, but I'm guessing you have files and you set their proprietary formats. I don't think it works like that because, you know, vinyl has to be, they're offering that as a service to bands. So you pay them a fee and they put it on record for you. So in a way, it's a good way, because I think that's where they're seeing the space move from what I can tell from how they market things, is that they're doing that record thing, putting live shows. So some artists have live streams that Bandcamp has set up. And so you would pay, you know, $1 or $2 to watch your favorite artist perform an album in their living room, which I think is really fun. Yeah,
that sounds kind of cool. Yeah. Hey, so I just usually we wrap up our talk with like what we're working on this week. So if we have any projects we're working on, we just talk about that. Are you working on anything?
I got a ton of projects. I've just got the boards left and right. So the one I'm most excited about is probably this one. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Jupiter FX.
I've heard of them, but I haven't actually used any of their stuff.
So they're a company out of Germany, and they make a bunch of pedals. They are aggressively loud, nasty pedals. They also make part for part recreation of the Sun Model T. Like, they're the only company that's out there doing that. And so they're a really cool company. And this is their reverb project. And it's essentially a fuzzed out reverb that has, it's a belt and brick style reverb. And there's like a boost in it. And it's also got a fuzz in it too. And this was this project that I got last year. And essentially they were moving to all sub mini, so they wanted to clear out their old boards, and so they just said, hey, if you want one, they're $5, we'll mail it to you. And so I got this, and I've finally ordered the brick reverb for it, and yeah, so I'm excited to build this. And this is still in production. You can buy it from them for like $300 or whatever, but they were selling the PCBs alongside it too. So it's like a oscillating feedback reverb. So and I'm excited to try it. I know a lot of people are kind of down on the belt and brick style reverb because it's a specific sound, right? Like you hear it, and I'll hear a demo online. I'll go, oh, that's a belt and brick, like every time. But this one sounds real good and kind of fills in a gap that I don't have on my pedal board. So that's the main thing I've been working on, getting parts together for. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about.
Cool. Actually, I kind of like the belt and brick. It's kind of like, I don't know. It actually doesn't bother me, the sound.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things that there's only so many sounds you can get out of it unless you do a bunch of off-board stuff. And so a lot of people just took the schematic that the company themselves put out, and people just made a reverb and said, hey, I've got a reverb. And so then you've got like 30 different companies all making identical reverbs, and it's like, oh, okay, it's a belt and brick. Like, I already have one of those, I don't need another one. I like the sound of it too, but it's like, I wanted something different, because I also have I've made a reverb in the past that works on the Spin Semi FV1, and that's a great chip too, but I don't know programming, so I can't do much for that one. But yeah, I'm happy to have this one.
Yeah. So I'll ask for the newbies in the audience, including me, what's a belt and brick?
Do you want to take that one, Mitchell, or do you want me to?
Sure, yeah. So remember that that reverb I gave you that
Yeah,
had
the mood ring.
that has a Belton brick in it.
Aha. Okay.
So the Belton brick, it's actually like a brick. It's like a pretty big chip. It's like maybe an inch by an inch and a half, and it's like half an inch thick. It's really big. And it actually has like a bunch of Princeton Technologies PT 2399s in it. There's some speculation because the company doesn't tell us. So the company's name is Belton, I think, and that's where the name comes from.
Okay.
But their brick, basically, it has like 3 delay chips or 5 delay chips in it. And then the delay times are short and they're set to a little bit of an offset, right? So it just basically like simulates a reverb, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in a single package.
Right.
Right. So you can build stuff with it, you know, reverb effects, you know.
Is that the Bucket Brigade style?
I think it's digital, actually.
Okay. Okay.
It's kind of digital analog. It's kind of somewhere in between.
Yeah, a lot of people will say that the 2399 chip is analog, but I don't think it is. It's a karaoke digital chip that just provides short echo. Now you can do a lot with that chip. If you've seen any of the work done by like what's the Champion Lecky, he has been delivered around both, and you can get that chip if you push it to its extremes. You can get vibrato, you can get chorusing, you can get sort of those things by making it go beyond what it's supposed to do. So there's a lot of good stuff to be had out of those chips, but I wouldn't necessarily call them analog, because generally with the Bucket Brigade you need a compounder and you need the thing, you know, the delay line itself, and this is all in one. So I don't know if I would necessarily call it analog. I think it's a digital chip that it's been pre-programmed to do that one job.
Okay.
Yeah. That PT 2399 chip is kind of like a DIY stomp box darling. Like the community of do-it-yourself people, like, you know, just hobbyists really took to the chip, and they've done like the craziest things with it. It's really cool, actually. It's a super cool, and I built a couple delays with it, you know, and it's like it's cheap and easy to work with. So like the DIY community just kind of glommed onto it and has done a lot with it. Yeah. Hey, so what are you working on this week, Kirk?
Well, after I finish figuring out what's wrong with my range master, I'm going to I think I'm going to start putting together my P bass.
Oh, cool.
It's the week for that. I took an extra day off this week, so I'm going to try to make best use of that time and start carving it up.
Nice. Tell me if you want to come by and use the router.
Yeah. Thanks. I think I might want to do some video about, you know, how to use the StewMac Dremel router base. So I think I'm going to try to drill that second pickup cavity using that and a drill. But,
oh, that'd be cool. Actually, that'd be really neat to see, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of people who you know, who live in apartments and, you know, don't have access to, you know, power tools, and I think, you know, it's like they want to know how to put together a guitar in their living room, or, you know, kitchen, whatever it might be.
Nice. Yeah. So this week I'm working on I just finished up, I had done this series of pedals where I stuffed some other circuits in Boss DS1 enclosures. So like, and I got inspired because I had seen the Boss TB2, you know, their tone bender collaboration, going for like thousands of dollars on Reverb, and I was like, I'm never gonna buy one of those. They cost too much. Even at the original price of $350 is kind of like more than I'd want to spend on it. So I thought, like, I'm gonna just build my own. So this is actually the Burns Buzz Around. It was a 3-knob tone bender, kind of like a fuzz. So I got a DS1 and I stuffed the burns in here. I did two more too. I did a Big Muff and and the 1981 inventions. But those projects, this is like kind of concluding that series of projects. I don't know what I'm working on. I got a few circuit boards, but a guy on the Reddit subreddit, the DIY pedal subreddit, sent me this circuit board. He says it's a clone of the Ibanez Wow Wow fuzz. It's like WAU, like two words. You'd think it was a wah pedal, but it's actually like a super fuzz kind of clone. So it's this guy, he's got this website, Breakfast Audio, and he sells like circuit boards. But he asked a question and I helped him out. And then he was like, well, I'll send you a circuit board for free. So I'm going to try and see if I can get this to work. Maybe it'll be one of my projects, you know?
Cool. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. And it's, I don't know. I think I don't know if I've built the Super Fuzz. I think I have one somewhere. But this one's a little different, but it's very similar to the Super Fuzz. Like actually Super Fuzz got cloned a bunch of times. Like, you know, there's a lot of different versions of it, you know? So anyway, I'll try this one out and see how it works, you know?
And isn't the Super Fuzz also a super rare pedal that's gone up in value significantly?
Yeah, I think the originals are worth a whole bunch. I actually like them because they came in this big box with a big rubber pad on the top that said Super Fuzz or it's Fuzz or something on it, right? It was just a big rubber thing. You just stepped on the rubber pad. You know, it was just this big box, you know? It didn't have a button. It didn't have one of these stomp switches on it. It just had a big rubber pad that you stepped on, you know? So it was kind of a cool, fun design. Nobody's doing that anymore, you know?
It's almost like it was the precursor to what Boss started doing, you know?
Oh, maybe, yeah. Could be, yeah.
Because I mean, because I know they made that original Super Fuzz pedal, like the Honey and the Chine and those old ones, and the big black enclosures with the, you know, the knobs on the back, and then you have a button on the front. But when Univox started making that's when they did the rubber pad. And so it's, yeah, I almost feel like I think it is a mechanical switch under the pad. I've never played one. I've only ever played the version that I made, but it's almost like somebody went, oh, this is a good idea. What if we, you know, because it's much easier to push a big plank than it is a tiny little actuator, you know? So yeah, I wonder if that was like the impetus for Boss to move over.
Yeah, maybe. The Boss enclosures are great. This is like a great form factor, and the switch is just totally like the experience of stepping on one of these is really positive. Like you just feel like it works well, you know? I wish you could buy
do you have a hard mechanical switch in there, or do you?
Oh, you know what I did was I used a relay switch. So are you familiar with Mad Bean? Mad Bean Pedals has a like a relay. I'll open this one up and we'll look at the inside here, right? It's they have a board called the Softy, right? So it uses a single SPST, right? Like a single pull switch, right? And then it uses a relay. Right. So what I was able to do is I use the Boss switch, right? The built-in Boss switch. And then this little circuit board right here is the Softy. And if I take this out, you can kind of see that orange box right there is the relay. So this box has like a DPD, like a 2-pole switch in it. And then it has like a little chip on there that's like a microcontroller that controls the LED, you know?
Right.
Right. So I just basically, I wrote a blog post about this, right? So it's got more pictures, but it's basically just a circuit board and then this extra circuit board for the switching. And this is connected to the original Boss switch. So I used I used a bunch of the original Boss stuff in here.
So what's like a price comparison for like using a relay switch versus, sorry, I know we're winding down here, but
yeah.
I wanted to switch over to a relay switching, but it seems like for me, not having to buy somebody else's solution, it seems like all the options out there are like 2-3 times the price of just like, you know, your old standard 3-pole double throat. So like I wanted to do it, but now I can get these for like $2.50, $3 versus having to buy a circuit board, having to buy a microcontroller, having to buy the orange, what was the orange box called? It's
A relay.
Relay. Yeah, a relay. So like, what's the cost benefit of one over the other?
Yeah. Okay. So I wrote up the cost on my blog post. So I actually kind of broke it down there, but roughly,
okay,
the board from Mad Bean costs like $4, and it comes with the microcontroller. So I don't have to worry about the microcontroller, and he programs that too, so you don't have to worry about it, right? The rest of the parts, though, you have to get yourself. And so basically, like it's a few resistors, a 5-volt regulator, and a BJT, like just a regular transistor, right? So most of that stuff isn't very costly. The relay, though, costs like $1.50 or something like that. So the relay costs a little bit, and you can't get that particular relay. So the relays are different. They're not all the same. So that particular relay, it seemed like I could only order that from Mauser, seemed to be the best location. So I had to do a Mauser part order, right? Usually I'd get everything at Tida because they're cheapest, because I'm cheap, right? But I had to make an order at Mauser for that stuff. So I forget what I figured the cost at being. It was about probably like $6 or $7, where and then if you had to buy a stomp switch too, you'd have to add the cost for that. So if you had to buy one of these, but with the Boss pedal, it came with the switch, so I didn't have to buy that for this project. So it was about like $6 or $7, where the 3-pole like mechanical switch would have been like $2.50.
Right.
So it definitely did cost more.
Yeah, it's the next step for me is doing that. But I think the only way to do it cost effectively is to have your own PCB, is to have your own microcontroller. Because if you're relying on somebody else, you know, you're working with their 50, 60% markup. So yeah, I can definitely see why it's more affordable to do the switching. And you know, it's funny. My pedal board has a mixture of soft switch stuff and hard switch stuff. I have one electro harmonics pedal, and every time I turn it on, it's like my whole pedal board just goes boom, because their switches take so much more power to actuate than anything else on my board. So yeah, I would love to switch over to doing the microcontroller and relay style.
Yeah,
sure.
You know what I'll throw in about this particular one, because I tried another one too by these other guys. So we could talk about that one next time, because it works a little differently. It doesn't use a microcontroller. It uses like a quad NAND gate. So it's basically like digital logic, but just on a chip, you know. But I'll say like the comparison, the stomp switch is probably good for 30,000 cycles. Right, so that's what they estimate. So sooner or later, you step on it enough times, it'll break. Right, I did an estimate of how long that might take. You know, like if you played it on the chorus of every song and you practiced on the weekends. I forget, I did the math, right? But it lasts pretty good, but it's still 30,000 cycles. The relay lasts about 100,000 cycles, so it'll last longer. But what's interesting to me, like, so the longevity isn't a big deal to me. But what is interesting is this particular relay, the way that it's set up is if the power goes off, it goes into bypass mode. So if your power ever cuts out, you still have a signal. If you have the original Boss pedal with the electronic switching, if the power goes off, the buffer is dead and the switch is dead, so you don't get any signal at all.
Right.
So that's actually kind of an interesting idea that, you know, it makes it kind of a little nicer. And you can do other things with the microcontroller. You could do something where if you stepped on the switch and held the button down, it went into a momentary mode and activated the effect until you released. Or if you did a quick switch like that, then it would toggle, you know? So that's like a possibility with the microcontroller that you could never do with a mechanical switch.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect. Yeah, and that's the next step for me, is doing some of those. I actually have a pedal that a friend made that's having problems, and it has that same kind of setup. You can see there.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah, I see
So,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
he's got a different board, but it's got a similar relay on it.
Right. Yeah. And I think something on here has died. And my guess is it's the 9-volt regulator, but I got to check it out. But that's on my list of things to do too. That's a project for this week as well.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool. Well, should we wrap it up? Anybody, any final things to say for this episode for our devoted fans?
I would just like to say, Steve, I hope you'll come back on the show. I'd like to hear how your reverb turns out, and hear about other things that you're working on. Yeah, welcome back anytime.
Hey, thanks so much. Nice to meet you. And I hope I can come back on soon and show that stuff. I'm actually waiting for, and you may not be so familiar with Tater, but I begrudgingly use them because they are the most affordable, but they also take the longest time.
They are
a lot
so
of the stuff,
slow.
So I've pretty much, I used to order all my pedals like powder coated. So I have this one here, which is another one that's on the bench. Cool powder coat, right? Like nice colors, whatever. But I've noticed that if I order any powder coat, it's like 2 weeks longer to get them than if you just get either a drilling and painting myself, because I can do that. So yeah, that's the one thing. Like I'm waiting on. So for this specific reverb, it's slightly too big for a BB case, the board. So you have to go up to an X something to fit it in. And so I ordered one of those undrilled, just a plain case with everything else, and I'm still waiting for the confirmation that they're shipping
unpainted,
it. And I ordered
undrilled.
it they're just slow. I guess a lot of the stuff they ship out of Thailand into Colorado, and then they repackage it and send it on to you. That just avoids all the customs hassle if they're sending it to a single location.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're essentially just transferring it from the same business to the same business, so there's no duty or whatever.
Okay.
Not on the customer. So I get why they do that. But
okay, so I got a question.
Takes a long time.
I got a question. Did you ever order anything from a company called FutureLec?
FutureLec?
So I think Taita is FutureLec because they were so slow. They were cheapest, but they were the slowest. They were like, you'd wait for months.
I've still got bags of stuff. Like they used to do a lot of like grab bags of parts. So a lot of the diodes I have, I look at them and I'm like, why would I have this random diode? And it's all Tater stuff. It's all Tater stuff from back in the day. Like they would just send you these little, and they just like, I have no idea what this is. It gives me the microvolts. It says, it's a tiny diode, and I got it in a pack of other diodes. It says, 8.2 volt. I don't know. I'm a diode. I have no idea. But if I find one of the old, because you'll probably remember the pots they used to sell were like, they just had they were like 25, 30-cent pots, and they even came with a knob. But they were like breadboarding pots. They weren't really PCB mount. They didn't have long pins, and so I still have a bunch of those sitting around that I'm never going to use. So yeah, here, hang on right here. So like this is the worst style of pot, because you can't really solder to it. It fits in a breadboard nicely, but like a lot of my early stuff was made using these. And yeah, Tater is definitely the same company, but it's almost like they got legit. And I think you can still buy from FutureLec. I think their website's still up. I checked it recently. Everything is cheaper than Tater, but
yeah,
I don't want to go back down that rabbit hole. It always seemed shady if I'd ever get my order.
Yeah,
so
I had the suspicion that they may be the same company. I don't know, because they ship from Thailand.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, cool. Well, we'll wrap up the episode, and we'll maybe do another episode. What I was going to say is next time I wanted to talk about how you painted this case, because I had some questions, but we kind of went long already. So because I was looking at it and I had some questions about the paint job, so we'll talk about that.
Oh, that'd be a
Sure.
great episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Kirk,
Yeah.
'cause Kirk has got to paint his pedal once because it's almost done, right? So you're gonna want to
Yes.
finish it, right? We need some techniques.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna
Got a lot of
sign off.
advice.
Yeah. See you later to all the devoted fans.
Yes, and thanks for stopping by. We'll see you in the next one.